Yo, welcome back. So if you watched my last video, you know I'm over level 100 in Dragon Traveler, and I broke down the biggest things I wish I knew before hitting that milestone. But in this follow-up, I want to talk about what happens after you push further, especially once you've hit around class level 50 and you're past campaign chapter 10, because that's where the game really shows you what it is long term. And I'm going to be honest in this one, I'm not here to hate on the game, and I'm not here to pretend it's perfect either. I'm free to play, I've put real time into it, and now that I'm basically at Endgame, I've got a clear opinion on the good parts, the bad parts, and whether it's actually worth sticking with once the honeymoon period is over. So first, let's start with what the game does really well, because I'll give credit where it's due. Early game Dragon Traveler feels amazing. It does that thing a lot of mobile games do where it absolutely showers you in rewards. You're getting gems, you're getting resources, you're unlocking systems constantly, your power is climbing, and it feels like every time you log in, you're progressing. As a free-to-play player, that first stretch actually feels generous. It feels like, okay, cool, I can keep up, I can build a team, I can unlock champions, I can upgrade stuff, and I'm not instantly hitting a paywall. And honestly, for the first few days, maybe even the first week, depending on how much you play, it's fun. It scratches that numbers go up itch. You feel like you're building something, you're learning classes, you're putting together your core team, and you're getting strong fast. That part is genuinely enjoyable, especially if you're playing casually. But here's where it changes. Once you've pushed far enough, you start seeing the real cap, and for me, the biggest cap isn't even skill or strategy. It's the champion access. Because after a while, you realize you're kind of handcuffed by premium tickets and the way the game gates the higher-end champions. Like, yeah, you can get pretty far with the champions you have, and you can absolutely build a strong account as free-to-play if you focus on classes properly. You can progress through a lot of content. But there's a ceiling where it starts feeling like, okay, the most exciting part of a gacha game is pulling and trying new top-tier units, and in Dragon Traveler, that part becomes a lot less exciting when the premium pulls are limited and the best stuff feels locked behind either time, spending, or very slow accumulation. And I'm not saying you can't do well free-to-play, you can, but it becomes more about patience than gameplay. You're not playing because you're discovering new builds and new strategies all the time. You're playing because you're waiting. Now let's talk about the endgame loop, because this is the part that really defines whether you'll stick around or not. Once the honeymoon period is over, the game starts to feel boring and repetitive, and the weirdest part is the most efficient way to play at endgame is barely playing at all. Like, the best thing to do becomes the dailies, and they take, around 5 minutes, and that's not even active play. Most of it is just setting it to auto battle, tapping through menus, collecting rewards, and you're done. And then there's the AFK part. Offline and AFK rewards become so strong that in some ways it feels like you get more progress from not playing than from actively playing. You log in, collect, do the quick dailies, maybe push 1 or 2 things, then log out. And if you sit there trying to grind manually, it doesn't feel like you're being rewarded for actually playing. And for me, that's where it starts feeling like the game is less about keeping the player entertained and more about keeping the player logging in. Because daily logins, daily engagement, auto battles, that all looks great on metrics. And again, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but it honestly feels like the end game is built more for the game's performance stats than for fun moment-to-moment gameplay. It's like the system is saying, just show up every day, press the buttons, and leave. And if that's the kind of game you want, fine, it works. But if you want something where the end game is deeper, more interesting, more challenging, or at least more varied, Dragon Traveler doesn't really deliver that, at least not in my experience. Now, once you get to class level 50 and you get past campaign chapter 10, the game does introduce more side content. And you might think, okay, here we go, endgame activities, new modes, maybe something that changes how you play. But honestly, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's more stuff to do, but it doesn't feel fresh for long. It gets stale quickly because it's basically the same gameplay loop with a new menu and a slightly different reward screen. It's like, yes, there's more content, but the content doesn't really evolve. You're still doing the same kind of fights, the same kind of power checks, the same kind of auto battles. It's not like suddenly you're making interesting decisions or building wildly different teams for unique mechanics. It's just more of the same. And this is where I want to talk about whales versus free-to-play, because whales might have a slightly different experience. If you're a whale, you'll have more champions, you'll have more high-end units, you'll upgrade faster, you might push further into certain modes, you might spend more time in the game because you've got more tools and you're chasing bigger numbers. But even then, the big problem is this: what you do at the start of the game, you're basically doing at the end of the game. There isn't a feeling of I've reached a new stage where the game becomes something different. It doesn't open up into a whole new experience. It's more like you're on a loop. Your numbers increase, but the gameplay doesn't really change. And for me, that's the biggest weakness. There's progression in stats, but not much progression in gameplay. And the story, I'll be honest, the story is stale at best. It's not terrible, it's not offensively bad, but it doesn't hook you. It doesn't make you desperate to see what happens next. It feels like filler that's there because a campaign has to exist. So if you're the type of player who needs a strong story to stay invested, this probably isn't going to hold your attention for long. So what's my overall opinion now that I've basically hit Endgame? I'd say Dragon Traveler is fun for a few days. It's fun when you're being showered in rewards. It's fun when you're unlocking systems and your account is growing fast. It's fun when you're experimenting and building your core team and learning how the class system works. But once you're past that early generosity and the novelty wears off, it becomes repetitive. It becomes daily logins, auto battles, and waiting on resources, especially as free-to-play. And when the most efficient way to play is to spend 5 minutes a day and then log out, that tells you a lot about the kind of endgame it has. So would I recommend it? Yes, but only in a specific way. I can recommend it as something to do casually, something you play on a lunch break, something you open when you've got 20 or 30 minutes to waste, something you check in on, collect your rewards, make a little progress, and move on. But I can't recommend it as a main game. I can't recommend it as something you sink hours into expecting deep progression and fresh endgame content, because it just doesn't feel built for that. And if you're currently in the honeymoon phase, enjoying all the gifts and feeling like the game is amazing, I'm not telling you to quit. Enjoy it. Ride that wave, because that early part is genuinely the best part. I'm just saying, be aware of what's coming later so you don't get blindsided when it turns into a loop. And yeah, that's my honest endgame take after hitting class level 50 and pushing past campaign chapter 10. If you're also at endgame, tell me your experience in the comments. Do you agree, or are you still enjoying it? And if you want another follow-up, I can do one specifically on what to prioritize at endgame as free-to-play, how to make the daily loop as efficient as possible, and what's actually worth your time versus what's just busy work. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.